Hello everyone, welcome back to the Keep Productive YouTube channel. It is Francesco here. So in today's video, I am very lucky to be passing over to Chris Dancy, who many of you know is the mindful cyborg. He is the most connected human on the planet. You just have to Google most connected and he pops up. Well, it's going to be super interesting because we did a video maybe about 3 or 4 weeks ago now with Mike Vardy about the productivity dilemma, talking about I guess the framing of productivity and tools, digital values and things like that. And if you watched it, Chris did like a presentation, but he sort of sped through it. I didn't really give him enough time to do it. So today he's going to do that full extensive presentation about everything from digital values to the role of values in your lifestyle with productivity and why productivity, I guess, isn't as important in holistical view of things. And it's a really interesting presentation. I'll be watching it a second time because there's so much to unpack. So I just want to say a big thank you to Chris, but also I think this conversation is really important about why tools and why productivity needs to be something that is tailored to you, and why it's not just about the tools. It's about this whole system around it, about how you approach situations. I think Chris really explains it very well in this presentation. So I want to take a huge thank you to Chris for putting the time and attention into this. At the end, near the end of the slides, if you're looking to actually learn more about him and also give him a bit of love, you can check out his book, Don't Unplug. And also you can leave him a comment below. The video that we did on Airtable was one of the most successful videos when it comes to engagement. People loved it, and I think you'll love this video here today. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Chris Dancy. Cheers, Chris.
Hello, my name is Chris Dancy, and I'm excited to be back on Keep Productive. I'm here today to talk about reframing productivity from taskless to grave, managing your time by using your values. This is a deeply personal topic to me, and it's one I'm really excited to be sharing with the audience today. You see, productivity, I think, has a problem. And some of it is its incessant desire to manage time, which in many ways is an exercise in managing our attention. Yet our attention is very, very small some days, and our focus can be very, very large. So by using values, we can fundamentally start to shift how we think about our productivity into thinking about how we think of our values. I hope you're excited because I know I am. Let's jump right in. To get started, we have to talk a little bit about my journey. As of today, I'm 52 years old and I'm married, only about 3 years, and I live in Texas, the United States, and I split my time between Texas, New York City, and the Nordics. But it always wasn't this way. You see, I became kind of D-list internet celebrity by documenting and organizing a lot of my life. During that time, what I would do was actually start to systematically look at how I was spending my time. Starting in 2008, I took every piece of information ever created about me, some of it I had a hand in, some of it I passively created, and organized and structured that data. That data then was orchestrated, today what we would use Zapier for, in a way to send me real-time updates on how I should be thinking and spending my time. From there, I allowed that data to be visible in Google Calendar. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of miniature little appointments every day categorized by how I spent that time. And this allowed me from 2008 to 2017 to really start to explore what was important to me and how I thought about it. You see, I found we fundamentally have a problem, or at least I did, and that's we don't know how to measure what we care about, so we care about what we measure. And for me, I had to back away from that. So what I'm going to do today is explain to you some of the things I learned through that journey and through my latest incarnation of managing my productivity and health and so many other aspects of my life. I call this the productivity problem. You see, in reality, if we're honest with each other, productivity has a major problem, and it falls into 4 areas. The first is it's time consuming. For many of us, let's be honest, we love the concept of setting up systems. It's what we do. It allows us to think about how we think. The second thing, which can't be underestimated, is it's expensive. Yes, many systems have free plans. The reality, though, is they're not free if we can't get our data out or make our processes visible or share our workflow with others. Third, they are often ineffective. When you think about all the processes and productivity you've put together in your life, very few things make it all the way to the end. You might try this process, this skill set, but at the end of the day, it's just gone. Everything becomes ineffective sooner or later. And finally, and most harshly, if we're honest about productivity, it's selfish. So often I've been sent an email where someone said, here's an appointment, you can book me. And I have to go to a web form, use the web form, figure out their calendar, figure out my calendar, and hope somehow I can end up meeting with someone. You see, productivity at its core is about me. It's about my time. And very often, it doesn't ever go beyond that. Yes, you can hope with your family, you can align around a certain set of things, but at the end of the day, it's pretty selfish. You see, productivity actually fails because of its short-term focus. It's all about saving your time. And I've never met anyone who did anything with the time they saved. It's a lie. But that's another talk. So let's go on and talk about evolution and productivity, because we didn't just end up here in 2020 or whenever you're watching this video. We've had a long time to get in this mess. When I think back about the 1990s, the early 1990s, and the advent of everyone starting to own a PC, productivity was really in vogue. Office suites were like the du jour software, and everyone had to have some access point where they could create. Some people liked Microsoft Paint. Some people liked Microsoft Outlook. It was all about how you saw what productivity meant to you. And at that time, we had all sorts of books and thought leaders that helped us understand our times. One of the most prominent ones that really shaped my worldview at that time was The 7 Habits by Stephen Covey. But that didn't last very long, because as the internet came, PCs and PC productivity started to shift, and we went more into web-based workflows and new thought leaders and systems, getting things done, still referenced today. It's almost like the Old Testament for productivity. But in reality, it wasn't new, and none of the things being said were profound. They just gave us all a common framework and language in which to talk about productivity through. And that's really what productivity is at the end of the day. It's about finding a common framework. Also at that time, we moved away from these centers of influences being traditional media to websites. I remember spending a lot of time on Lifehacker wondering, gosh, what can I learn today? Sometime around 2010, as, let's be honest, work and personal life became more unbalanced, we had a sprawl. And suddenly, the phone. So the phone gave rise to app-based productivity. Some of our favorite apps from the early 2010s are gone today. I still sometimes get a little bit misty-eyed when I think about how amazing they were. But apps did something else. They created a single focus on our productivity. We had apps just for a specific piece of productivity, and back then a lot of these things didn't talk to each other. APIs weren't as robust or as commonplace as they are today. But also new types of influencers came on the scene. People like Tim Ferriss, who made you believe with just a little bit of effort, you could only spend 4 hours a week working and then take the rest of the time off. But the challenge is most of us don't want to have time off. We like being busy. We like structure. So that didn't last. And then, of course, Tim and like David and the people before him, they move on. The centers of influence move to bigger, whole technology-focused brands like TechCrunch. Sometime around 2015, we shifted again. People like Cal Newport and Deep Work, This idea that if we just understood and could use our focus, could really harness it, all sorts of systems and biohacking started to merge together. Our app platforms became much more ubiquitous as we all kind of raced toward this new future. But we were on different pages and different times with different priorities. And even our influencers started looking more like spokespeople than actually people who were trying to get anything done. You see, the Gary V's of the world, while they promised us hustle, they left us pretty lonely. Because no one wants to be married to someone who's always hustling. No one. Ever. And no one wants to be friends with anyone who's always selling. No one. Ever. So here we are today. In the generation of hyper-focus, bespoke, well-designed systems, which on the front end look amazing, but in reality are just props for the life we wish we had. And it's important that we start to admit this, because all the systems in the world will never help us focus. All the atomic habits will never help us build strong routines. We need to be honest about where we are and what we value, and build systems and language around that. We have to stop letting our phones dictate what we're allowed to do, and we need to just do and dictate to our phones. For me, when I think about the evolution of productivity, it's exciting because I can tell things are changing and changing for the better. And while I might not be a thought leader or an influencer, let's be honest, there's people who do that much better than I do. I do have pretty strong opinions about it because I'm at an age in my life where I think about these things. And I think maybe you are too. It doesn't matter if you're 15 or 30 or 50 or 65. We all spend a lot of time thinking about our time. And this time has helped us focus on what that means. You see, hyper-focus, the time we're in now, is actually an exploitation of what we value because it ignores all the other things that are dependent when we're not focusing. So let's kill flow and actually start to move. So what does that look like? You know, when I think about time and I think about productivity, I see 5 domains that we fundamentally need to all talk about and all agree on and understand. While it looks like a maturity level, every day we spend time in some domains and some time in others. But overall, we're maturing and going through these domains in an order together. The first one, the gateway drug to productivity, is what I call the productivity-centered domain. Now, this is probably the coolest domain because it's the one where you can start to focus on time, optimization. But as we've already discussed, there are some pretty hefty prices to pay. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people, a lot of folks on the internet who make a lot of money and get a lot of views telling you that if you just do this right, your life will somehow magically come together. And that is a lie. The next level, if you somehow can manage to get through this, or you've got some extra cycles, is usually the health-centered domain. Health productivity is completely different than clerical productivity. Health productivity is really about measuring yourself, whether it's the sprints you're doing, the distracted timer you're using, or your weight, your sleep, your love life. But the cost of a health-centered domain is really relationships, balance, and isolation. Once you master productivity and health, you sometimes can find yourself alone. Maybe successful, but probably alone. And chances of you meeting someone else who's at the exact same point you are pretty slim. The next one is the value-centered domain. This one is provocative because it can come from nowhere. All of a sudden, your life could be perfect, and then boom, you've had a change. You move. You change jobs. A pandemic hits. Suddenly, your productivity and your health is out the window. Now, you could spend all your time in the value domain. You might gain a few pounds. You might not save your receipts, but you will certainly be fundamentally happier. The value-centered domain is so interesting when you actually get into it because focusing on how your time is executed, not saving it, but spending it right, can be very intoxicating. But in the end, you end up kind of falling behind there too. Because once you get out of your time, you start to think about our time. And that's your impact on things. Now, some people are natural conservationists, and the nature center domain was perfect for them. They might not be the best at clerical things or taking care of their health, but they think about the interdependencies, the mutuality of productivity, something a lot of productivity professionals never think of. Mutuality. We think of access, not codependency. The nature center domain is really about aligning everything you've done to this point, productivity, health, values, to the world around you. It can be a world of systems, like people, friends, or a world of organic systems, like nature, the heavens, food cycles, seasons. Whatever that alignment, that mutuality is, you'll find it. And then, unfortunately, for so many of us, when something absolutely terrifying happens, we usually enter what I call the transcendence domain. And that's where, because of a major life change, or possibly an illness, we start to have to consider how we spent our entire time, the mutuality of our time, the values of our time, the health of our time, and the productivity of our time. Now, this is not an exclusive, exhaustive list of the way that I want you to think about your productivity journey, but it's a good start, because there are trends and costs in every single one of these domains that I know you've experienced. I know because I've done a lot of these things myself, and I still do them. But the reality is, we need to get honest about our productivity journey and realize that it's about time. Because our productivity evolves because of our long-term desires. And once we establish what those are, and those long-term desires become long-term concrete agreements with ourselves that we call values, this won't change. If we dig a little deeper, we can see, even in our everyday tools, things from rescue time to help us manage and be productive and help our focus, to gyroscope to help us with our health, sleep, meditation, to tools like Life Cycle, which go a step further and help us focus on our quality of being, our quality of relationships to each other, all the way out to newer tools like the one I've developed called Our Balance, which helps us focus strictly on our well-doing, our mutuality with other people. There's a lot here to think about. And as soon as you start seeing your applications through this lens, seeing your process deep within the interconnectedness of things, the sooner you'll be able to start to feel good about anything you do in any one of these domains, because each domain needs the one before it. Finally, you can judge a man by the tools he uses. Seriously. So often I travel around the world and I do something called phone palmistry. At conferences, I'll have a booth after I get done a keynote. I'll sit there. It looks like a fortune teller booth. People will wait in line hours. It's amazing. They'll hand me their phones. They'll unlock their screens. I won't open anything, and I'll start to tell them about their lives. Am I psychic? Maybe. But the reality is, the way we design our phones, the apps we keep on our home screens, the order those apps are in, even the people they cover up in the photos say a lot about what we value. And I think it's such an exciting time to start to have these conversations. Finally, just backing out to 3 simple levels, you can start to understand where you are and where you want to be. Because if you exclude productivity and just focus on the integration of your health, you'll realize the quantified self falls short in so many areas. But if you somehow evolve enough to become focused on the qualitative nature of your relationships, that too will fall short, and you can promise yourself you will end up in the quantified selflessness, I call it, of understanding the impact of your systems and processes on other people. And that's what we're talking about today, impact and effectiveness on your system. So, where do we go from here? Well, the first thing is we have to understand that fundamentally we are seeing a shift in the world. We are moving from personal technology softwares and platforms, from 1990 to 2020, a 30-year span where most of the apps that were created and are used are solely for you. But if you're like me and you've been watching the last 5 years, you'll realize that most apps today are created for teams. It's not because everyone's becoming a business. It's because everyone's becoming connected. Today's applications take that same pyramid, that same Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and flips it on its head. Today, it's about solving for the big problems: health, well-being, shelter. And the tools people are using and designing are matching that. If you want to get ahead of the productivity game, it's about connecting, not to you, not to your processes, but to the real problems that exist in your community. Because I can guarantee that if they're not your problems today, they will be soon. See, we're moving from software based on me to software based on we. And it is an exciting ride, let me tell you this. So, how do you get started? Well, you could rewatch the beginning of this video a million times and go, I don't understand what he's saying, but I'll try to make it a little bit simpler. First, you could do what I did. In 2017, I sat down, I looked at all the dependencies on my life and thought, how do I integrate my business processes with the fact I'm getting married? And how do I integrate the fact I'm getting married with the fact that my spouse has a different exercise schedule than I do, and my spouse's family has completely different habits? And I started looking at this process and realizing I had this little teeny part about my productivity diagram called life. And it wasn't connected to any of the things I needed to do. Yes, my processes were great, but they were impacting and were going to crash into the rest of the world. The hyper-focus had to die. But a bigger problem, when I looked at how all of my processes didn't integrate with my life and I tried to map them, I had to come to the realization, what about other people? See, this is where productivity has its big fault. All the team billing, all the team access points, all the team spaces really don't consider other people and their needs. Every single one of us works differently. If there's anything in the last 5 years we've learned about the neurotypical movement and the neurodivergent movement, is we're each so different, and how we think and process problems is different. So we've got to start there. So for me, and what I would suggest you to do, is start with yourself. You've got you. There should be some place you can find all the information about you, and that's it. Your productivity doesn't need to be more than that. Where do you find your name, phone number, credit cards, address, simple things like that? Do you have a business card for yourself that you can reference that's easily accessible? Next, replicate that. Replicate it for the people in your life, your spouse, your children, not your coworkers, not your mother-in-law, just the people that keep you going. These are the people and the entities and organisms that make your life. And I said a new word there, entities. In this, there might be a business that you run. It's okay. That can be a focus also. Might even be pets. But at the end of the day, you, your spouse, your children or pets, maybe even your business if you're self-employed, are the fundamental groundwork for everything you do. So knowing what you know about those parts of your life is the critical first step. Now, the second step is a little bit more complicated, and a lot of us don't talk like this, so bear with me while I use some uncomfortable Walt Disney-like words because, well, I'm getting to be that age. Although I quit smoking. I don't think Walt ever did. So start with why. Step 2. Why are you doing this? This is really about defining your values. And I use that word values on purpose. It stands for something, value, something of worth. Now, some people like the term start with why. But for me, why sounds a little bit like a petulant 2-year-old, and I like the word value. I value this. And where this is, you write down what that is. But when you do this, you have to do it with the people in your life. You have to talk to them about what they value by creating simple words. I value health. I value safety. I value family. I value work. I value service. Once you have these really simple words, create some definitions and attach them to the words. But don't stop there. You next actually have to define the harder part of values. And those are the actions you will take and the guardrails you will respect for when those values are being violated. So critical. You have to have a plan that has actions and guardrails. Next, you take those things and you make them visible. You might use software. You might have a whiteboard. You might have sticky notes. But these values need to be posted somewhere for you and your family and anyone you come in contact with to notice. And I say this very deliberately. Your values need to be visible because we no longer live in an age where you can just do what you say you're going to do. People forget it. People just expect you to act like Netflix. When they call, you're supposed to drop everything. When they don't reply to an email, you're supposed to let that go. But making your values visible is super important because when they're visible, when they're clear, and you know who they relate to, all your decisions and processes become pretty simple. Very simple. Because you know the order in which you value life, and you know what the guardrails and actions are for those. So it doesn't matter if you're spending money on a bill or creating a task. It doesn't matter if you're sending an email or ordering something online. All of those things then tie to values. So let's unpack that a little bit. You know, step 3 is really about selecting a tool. So now you've got yourself, you've got your values, and you've got to find something to put this in. Now, I'm not going to tell you what to use. You can use anything you want. For a long time, Outlook was my value system. Who I responded to, when I responded. Evernote was my value system. What tag it got, how I found it, who I shared a note with. I even tried Notion. I could do a whole video on that. But the reality is, whatever tool you use, the framework of selecting who and why needs to be first. Don't try to automate your way into a better life. You'll just make bad values go faster. So, to select a tool, there are some guardrails, just like I said with values. The first thing is modality. You know, today, there are so many ways to access tools, but we have to think about how we work. I, for one, prefer my laptop and my desktop. So the modality of a web browser is super important. I'm not a big person for my apps. I'm getting old and I don't want to keep the phone on Zoom because I feel judged. The second thing is apps. Maybe you like apps, but is there a web app for your, not a desktop app for your system? Because if there's just a mobile app, again, that's not going to help. I, for one, not a big app person. The browser's going to be everywhere I go in the world. I need a browser. And then finally, consider the modality of automation. I'm not saying create automation. I'm saying consider it. Because if you select a tool that doesn't have any type of automation capabilities, you might end up abandoning that tool. All right, step B, access. So you've selected your modality. You've selected your tool. Now think about that access. Today, tools need to be configurable to the way you work. For me, when I think about that, that's as simple as going out and creating a portal where I can access all the pieces of my life that I find most important. More than my values, I can access everything in a single place, but it needs to be flexible. Maybe I need a very detailed view into my tasks, but a not so detailed view into my bills. So whatever you decide, access and how you access your system is super important. Do not select a system just because it has a pretty interface. That's someone else's choice and what you should value about your system, not yours. This is where creating custom web pages, and I believe probably why Notion has become so popular. But again, there'll be a time where we wonder, why did we ever do that? Next, think about how that access point can be made mobile. So for me, or a lot of people, you can create shortcuts on your mobile devices to get to specific parts. So maybe you're a Todoist fan. Could you create a shortcut that went to a specific area in Todoist? Your tool in step 3 about access is super important because if you don't use the tool and make it pretty effortless, you won't keep up with it. Next, access for others. Believe it or not, because Mutuality is part of this new game plan, the tool has to have access for other people. That means you need to be able to share the entire tool or just pieces of it. Maybe it's a single record in your task list you need to share. Maybe it's a whole table of bills. Whatever that is, whether it's your spouse or your CPA, them being able to get access to it is a fundamental part of your mutuality. Because if they can't see it, it doesn't exist. And if you're going into the tool 1,000,000 times a day to create different routines for other people, you might as well get a job for them. So access to you is fundamental. So you need to create access for others, and it needs to be part of your tool. And then finally, process flow. When I think about process flow, I think about the views that my tool would allow me. Am I someone who likes to work in a grid view, a Kanban view? Am I someone who likes to work in a gallery view or a calendar view? Am I someone who likes forms over tables? These views to your flow are so critically important to your stickiness to this tool, right? This feeling of wanting to use the tool. Because sometimes, if you're like me, you need something more design heavy. But sometimes you just want something straightforward and simple. Just get it in and get it out. That's kind of where process works. I don't want you to go into well, how does this all work together? I want you to think about how you think about it first. And then next, but not last, is integration and reporting. Once you've decided who is important to you and what you value, you then can create the other parts of your life you want to be productive with. Whether it's your inbox, your journaling, other people or organizations, your task goals and projects, how you spend your money, collect assets that you buy, maybe even how you manage your health or your business. All of these things sit on top of the foundation of who you are, who you care about, and why you do it. But most importantly, it allows you then to start to take simple things like the productivity of bill pay and map it to where that money goes, not by category, but by value. And then doing that same thing with tasks. Or more importantly, looking at very long trends, years, decades, and how those shaped and changed you and your happiness as it relates to your values. Because we'll talk about toward the end of this chat how values differ from tasks, if in no other way the time frame that they get created in. Last but not least, integration into time. You've got a system, you've thought about it, you're starting to map the dependencies, you created the access points. You now have to somehow function like the rest of the world. And the rest of the world functions on tasks and projects and time frames. But we actually have a way of thinking about this that often isn't explained very well. You see, each one of us has a behavior. What are we doing right now? You might be watching a video, you might be multitasking, but you're doing something. And that behavior is tied to a time. For instance, you're doing it right now. But how does that work? You see, between the behavior and the time, there are two ways things happen to you. Self-directed, you made the decision, or automatic, someone else made the decision or it happened to you. See, now that we understand behaviors, intention, and timing map to each other, we can start to look at all of these other processes over time. Very important. So let's take the simple process of thinking. My behavior is thinking. I'm sitting down, I'm talking to a friend, I'm watching a TV show, I'm thinking. It's happening spontaneous. It's happening, I'm not planning on thinking, it's just happening. Now, these thoughts can either be self-directed, ideas or inspiration, or they can be requests where all of a sudden my thinking is jarred by someone else. Or they can be requests. Now, this is important because productivity usually says you need an inbox. And I agree. But how you treat the inbox for spontaneous things dictates what's really important to you. I separate ideas and inspiration from requests and thoughts. An email from someone who's interested in working with me is a lot less important, regardless of money, than me capturing a moment of inspiration and forcing myself to write, draw, or diagram something I just figured out. You need to be productive for you in a way that helps yourself in the future. And that means understanding the mutuality components on how you value others. The second layer is actually one most people are used to. They don't even think about thinking. They're just like start doing. And that's being. So we've done thinking. Now we're just being. Being is different because it happens daily. Sometimes you're just going through your day. You're not thinking at all. You're just being. That's when you're doing things like setting intentions. You're reflecting in a moment. That's not a thought. That's a reflection. You're having interactions with other people, not requests from them. And you're having moments like, oh, that was really neat. Next, you've done thinking. You've done being. It's happened spontaneously. It's happened every day. You're doing. Doing is a monthly thing. When we think about doing, usually that's when we talk about task management. Doing is the process of being and thinking orchestrated in a way that helps you feel fulfilled. If you try to do tasks daily, you will fail. Tasks are a monthly process. Now, you can do a task every day, but your goal setting, your success around a task usually is reflected on monthly. So try to be daily, think every moment, but do only monthly. Now, we wouldn't be good timekeepers of productivity if we didn't go a little bit further. The next one is planning. So often we think when we're thinking, we're planning. We're really not. Planning sits way below thinking. You got it thinking, being, doing, planning. Planning is the integration of thinking, being, and doing. You understand enough contextually. And this is where we usually talk about projects over tasks. Projects are aspirational tasks that we've put some thought into the dependencies and place into the future. Projects usually are more than a month, but never more than a year. So I often think of projects as quarterly or a little longer. Beyond projects, we have goals. Now, goals is a big one. Everyone talks about goals, but goals lives in the behavior domain of living. Living. And this is so important because most of us who say we want to just feel like we're living, what we want are goals. Goals that are managed through our projects, projects that are managed through our habitual tasks, tasks that are created from our individual work on journaling and being that comes through our deep, thoughtful ideas, inspirations, requests, and thoughts. But this whole talk wasn't about thinking, being, doing, planning, or living. It was about thriving. And thriving is where your values happen. So while your goals are yearly or longer, your values are actually generational. If you think about it, not a whole lot changes in what your core beliefs are in 5 or 10 years. It usually takes a little bit longer. So really aligning your values, that is the rock foundation of your goals, projects, tasks, journals, and inbox, whether they're self-directed or automatic, whether they're happening now, daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly, or generationally. It's all linked together. It's about integrating into time the process system you're about to create and aligning to your values. You see, we can't save time. We can only spend it right. And you won't know if the transaction was correct until you're a lifetime away from it. So I'm asking you to consider that now. Last but not least, when you're designing this system of values, consider others. So often, as I said in the beginning of the talk, productivity is selfish. And mutuality is the only thing that unlocks that. So for my family, we've got 2 exercises we do daily and weekly. The first one is our system has a feeling wheel where we actually can log how we're feeling. But we take time to map the feeling from their core feelings like bad, happy, fearful, angry, all the way out to the things that are really hard to describe. The next thing we do, because while I might be someone who loves tasks and planning, my spouse isn't. So once a week, my family sits down and we actually do reflections and intentions. We have stickies, and the stickies align to the colors of our values, those being health, home, family, work, financial, and service. Then we go back in our first part of the exercise and we reflect on the week in a colored sticky the times when we saw ourselves or someone in our family meet and exceed those values. It's kind of like you did a good job, but it's important because we then share those with each other after we write them down. and we support each other, and we learn to speak with intention about these values. But speaking of intention, we don't stop with looking back. We actually do next what I call feel forward. Feel forward is the idea of taking your values and imagining the week coming up and what you would like to experience. It's not about finishing a project or getting a specific task done. It's about a feeling you have. So maybe you want to feel at peace. You might have a task or a habit of meditation, but what you want is the feeling. So we actually align to our values, and we write them down on the colored stickies, and we put them on our board. This simple act will fundamentally rewire yourself, your family, maybe even your coworkers if you're close enough to them, to start talking about the things you value. See, you don't need a corporate mission, vision, and values. You need conversations. You need conversations where you're allowed to have all your feelings, the ones that are uncomfortable to be around and the ones that are a joy to be with. Because we're not people with settings that can be toggled on and off. We are thinking, feeling organisms who are mutually dependent on each other and desperately need to talk about all of our lives, the good, the bad, the middle. With that, you can start today. Keep Productive is an amazing channel. I watch it religiously. I'm one of those people who actually have notifications turned on. Francesco is a remarkable person who's literally having a baby, getting married, and doing all those things right in front of us. We get to see his values every single day. But for you, I want you to go back and think about what your place on that productivity maturity chart is. Now, you can be in all the domains, 1 through 5 at once, but find it. Understand the pitfalls and the drawbacks, but more importantly, decide where you want to be. Next thing you can do if you want to get started is, I wrote a book a couple years ago. If you're interested in that, reach out to me. I'll send you one. No cost. I would love for you guys to start to think about the importance of being connected, because unlike a lot of books and influencers, I don't think you should unplug. I think you should plug in more. You should find the love and connection and support that's inside every single one of you, because it's not a phone, it's a way to be loving. And this isn't productivity, it's a way of caring and showing our values. Third to last thing you can do, check out my latest app. It's called Our Balance. It's in the App Store and the Android Play Store. The whole function of this application is to help you start to think about mutuality. You can see your balance between work and home, but more importantly, you can see the balance of the places you go and the people who go there. You can set up a group for you and maybe your spouse. You can set up a group for your neighborhood, but you can see how everyone's doing in real time anonymously, whether they're going to work, staying home, seeing friends, or sleeping. Those are the 4 domains. And the last thing you can do today is work with me. If this kind of thing made you interested and you want help, give me a shout. I can tell you can ask a lot of people in the community. I speak to people every single day. I love chatting with them. But more than anything, I value service. I value helping other people. I value letting other people be as full or as empty as they need to be, because that's what I need, and that's what we all need. Just remember, the best apps are people. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.